Welcome to the lightning talks for our Active Learning Academy Spring Expo. Our first group includes Harini, Eric, Samantha, Tanya, and Bryce. I'm going to give you all a chance to introduce yourselves as well. But if one of your group members wants to go ahead and share and get started, we have 10 minutes per session.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. Welcome to our ALA presentation entitled Active Collaborative Learning in All 9 Courses. My name is Tanya Bates, joined by my team, Sam Furr, Harini Ramaprasad, Eric Biker, and Bryce Van Doren. You can see here my lovely team. And let's begin with some background information here. So students enrolled in our online courses, they were invited to join this study. And throughout the semester, students participated in collaborative group activities with structure, tools, and guidelines of collaboration. And instructors gave formative feedback while students engaged in reflective self-assessment activities throughout the courses. The self-assessment activities, as well as student performance and course feedback, were analyzed using a mixed methods approach. And I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Eric.
Thank you, Tanya. We had a number of research questions, which was part of this research on active collaborative learning. You can see some here. I'm going to just hit some highlights related to what is scaffolding of student-centered learning activities, what does that look like, and what impact does that make, as well as what is the impact of reflection on the students' or their perceptions of active collaborative learning. And then we also wanted to examine the impact of self and peer assessment, and then also to be able to examine what were our findings and how did the findings compare across and between the disciplines that we represent. Tanya, if you could go to the next slide. So this was interdisciplinary study. You can see the different colleges represented here on the screen. We had 207 students. And we surveyed the students in a pre and post survey, and then also asked them to reflect on the group work at various points in the semester. And I'll turn it over to Harini to explain a little bit more about each class.
Thanks so much, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm Harini Ramaprasad. So I'll start by briefly talking about establishing groups, and I know there was some mention of this in Dr. Gunder's talk as well earlier today. So in general, we found that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to forming groups, and in our team, we considered several aspects to determine how groups should be formed. Some of the main considerations are listed here. One thing to think about is the target student body. Is it an undergraduate course or a graduate course? Are most or all of the students within the same major, or are they from diverse majors? Another thing is the level of students. Is it a first-year class, or is it an upper division, like junior or senior class, or a graduate class? Another important thing to think about is the duration for the groups themselves. Are they short-term groups that will be changed maybe every week or two, or are they long-term groups that students will stay in for the entire semester? And then when assigning groups, it's also important to think about what kind of grade component is associated with the group work. Are the groups primarily for low-stakes activities, or are they for high-stakes projects? And another aspect is to think about whether the course itself is synchronous or asynchronous, because that will determine how and when groups are expected to collaborate. A final thing is to think about whether the groups will be self-selected by students, or whether they will be assigned by the instructor based on some criteria. And once again, this did come up in some of the lightning talks this morning as well. This decision itself could depend on some of the other factors that are listed here, and the decision could affect how groups are assigned. Will it be random? Will it be based on some kind of survey? And so on. Next slide, please. And next, we'll talk about multiple approaches that we used in our courses to set students up for success in group work. First approach is to establish and maintain a good uniform weekly structure for the courses. And this basically ensures that students know what to expect each week, what the due dates are going to be, etc. And it can help them plan and organize their collaborative activities better. We primarily have 3 courses here. The first one is Biology 1110, which Tanya and Sam teach. It's a first-year course in which students stay in the same groups long-term, and they self-select into these groups. This was an online asynchronous course. The second course is ITCS 6112, which I teach. It's a graduate course. There's 2 terms of long-term groupings, one for low-stakes activities and one for high-stakes project teams. The activity teams are randomly assigned. The project teams are assigned by me based on a survey. This course is also an online asynchronous one. The third is ELED 3223. It's a junior senior level course in the College of Education. Students self-select into long-term groups, and it was a hybrid course, partially synchronous and partially asynchronous. So the 3 courses were very different from each other in many ways, but one thing they had in common is that consistent weekly structure that I started talking about. So students knew each week what types of activities they would have and when those would be due. For example, in Biology 1110, group activities were always due on a specific day. Same thing with my course. ELED 3223 had a jobs checklist which scaffolded activity due dates that students could refer to when they worked on collaborative activities. Now I will pass it on to Sam.
Hi, everyone. I am Sam. I wanted to continue talking about some of the things we did to set our groups up for success. So in addition to the uniform structure and deadlines, the second key element that drives a student's success in an online setting is, as the instructor, giving them tips and having guidelines to help them establish these effective collaborations. So in this example that you're seeing in the slide from 1110 from biology, it's a group logistics activity. And what we use this for is to ensure that the students get to know each other. And it also has them think about how they will work together throughout the semester, because a lot of the frustration and negativity about group work comes from things like miscommunications, different working styles, different expectations about who's doing what. So this aims to alleviate that by first asking the students to introduce themselves, get to know each other, and then discuss and decide how often they'll meet, when they'll meet, the platform they'll use, gain an understanding of each other's working styles, agree on how they'll coordinate and how they're going to make sure the work gets done on time with equal effort. And they can also decide what the group will do if someone's not contributing equally or if a new group member gets added. So this helps us to ensure that the group work will go smoothly by setting these expectations up front. And if there are bumps in the road along the way, there's already a plan in place to address them. And all of the group members have agreed to that and they're on the same page. Next slide, please. The final thing that we had to discuss are our reflection surveys. So we have a brief reflection survey after each group activity that allows our students to ask questions and give feedback on how their group worked together that week. And it allows you as the instructor to sort of monitor the group dynamics, especially in an online course that can be difficult. So these surveys provide accountability for each group member. There are questions that ask if everyone contributed, if everyone was present. And then there's also some questions like, how are you doing this week? Do you need any additional support, to provide the student a chance to talk to the instructor. And so in return, we as the instructors then have the opportunity to comment back to the student and address concerns, refer them to things like tutoring or counseling if needed, and really just make connections with online students that we might not make otherwise. And with that, I will turn it over to Bryce to finish up.
So Jessica brought up an excellent point that students often complain about group work. And at the end of the semester, we asked students to reflect on their opinions about group work. We also had asked them at the beginning of the semester, but this word cloud shows much more positive words overall that students brought up in their reflections at the end of the semester after our approach of scaffolding and grouping students together. Next slide, please. So we do have a few key takeaways for you. We recommend, again, to form groups based on work style and ethic, which is always important so the personalities mesh. We also say that it's important to create assignments where students have the opportunity to work in groups and to set consistent deadlines when students can expect to turn in those assignments each week so that there is some consistency and they're not trying to figure out when to turn everything in. We also found that the use of technological tools like Miro and Google Jamboard were important to help collaborative learning, and that it was important to continuously revise the guidelines for effective collaboration based on student feedback. Next slide, please. So we would definitely like to thank the Active Learning Academy for bringing us all together. We would not have met likely without the Active Learning Academy. And we'd also like to thank the Center for Teaching and Learning for supporting our research through a scholarship of teaching and learning for our research project that we were presenting today.
Thank you so much. And we're always such a, it's always such a pleasure for us to work with all of you as amazing faculty. So highlight of our day for sure. All right, so for our next group, looks like Tanya and Farzana.
Hello, everybody.
Oh.
Hi, I'm going to share my screen. So Farzana and I also wanted to let you all know that we have another group member who can't be here today, Cynthia Bush and the Belk College of Business. And our presentation is called Building on the Remote Learning Experience. Whoopsie. Well, one moment. I'm not sure why I can't advance. It's really weird. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Tanya.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know. The problem is I don't know what I did to get there. My usual space bar is not working. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. I'm Farzana, like Tanya mentioned, and I'm going to talk about some of the tools that are available to us and some that we've used for group interaction in an online and face-to-face classes. We were just hearing about the group activities or how different some of these tools from just the previous talk. But what I have on this screen is a couple of those different tools that we have used while we were doing remote learning. But because of the availability of technology with pretty much everyone, we can actually use these things now that we are back in person in class also. So whatever we use online, there is a potential to use that actually in our face-to-face classes as well. Some of these tools I am going to talk about. Some of you may be familiar with one or the other or a couple of them and not necessarily all of them. I myself did not even use or have not necessarily used all of these tools in my classes, but there's a couple of these that I have used more commonly. So first, let me talk about Mentimeter. Mentimeter is an interactive presentation software. It can help us create engagement in classrooms in person as well as in an online platform. With the Mentimeter, we can do live polls, interactive presentations, things like the word cloud, like the one of the slides that we saw in the previous presentation, something similar to that. So I like to use this particular tool when I first introduce a topic or sometimes even in the end of discussion of a topic to see what students attained from that particular concept or what they know about it to begin with. So kind of assess where the classroom is before starting a new topic. Then I have Miro in the middle. Miro is also another software that provides some engagement and it also can be used in person and also online. So it's like an interactive online whiteboard pretty much. It allows groups to create notes, designs, move things around, communicate even through videos, or online chats. So it's a little bit more creative in some ways for students to actually interact. So teams can work together, groups can work together and don't feel like, so it's particularly important in the online setup, of course, when they don't have that engagement part. But for in-person classes, also, I think this is a great tool that can be used. Next, I have Padlet and Google Jamboard. Throughout the day today, we've had some example of Google Jamboard already. We've all kind of used some of it. So even if you haven't used it in class, this is something that definitely can be used in class. Just today, earlier in one of the talks, I think we were talking, I guess the presenter was talking about using Google Jamboard as kind of like an exit kind of tool. So it's really interesting, and that I have not used as before, but I would like to now use that as one of those strategies before ending a module or ending a topic, have the Google Jamboard as some sort of activity around a Google Jamboard to see what students got out of it, if they still have any questions regarding that topic. So again, some sort of interaction to see, especially for students that don't want to speak out and just talk in person. These are great tools. Tanya, would you please move to the next slide?
Yeah. So we've got a couple of other sources we wanted to tell you about. And of course, our little blue banner here, we're always reminding ourselves and want to remind you that everything we're doing in our online courses, we can do it in our face-to-face classes, and they can be really powerful collaboration spaces, even in just small little bits in our classrooms. Kahoot and Poll Everywhere, you may be familiar with. Of course, these are tools that students can use to give instant feedback, right? You can ask them, how are you feeling on this assignment? Are you understanding where you are? Give me, ones, twos, or threes. And so you can get an instant feedback right now. Are they understanding material? Get other information from them. So it's really great for that immediate feedback or immediate information that you want. GatherTown is an interesting site. So it's sort of like a map, and you might want to go over and just sort of check it out and see what it's like. It's these virtual spaces that you can customize and sort of set them up how you want them to be. And then you can have these little working communities that can also work with each other. So it's another kind of online space for doing collaboration work. And then of course, you're probably already using Google Docs and Google Slides. If you aren't, think about jumping into that, because it's such an easy way to organize work. Students can share documents together. The Google Docs suite, offers all kinds of things now, or the Google apps, I guess, offer all kinds of things. You can do charts, you can do surveys, you can insert images, you can make tables. It's just really effective and a nice way to collaborate. We also have some information we wanted to share with you from a really great resource that we found, and it's called 271 Activities for Interactive Learning. But we really like this thing. It's long. I mean, there really are 200 things on it. And in a minute, I'll drop a link in the chat for you to that document and to some of the other resources we want to share with you in case you just want to grab those and keep them to look at later. Some of those things aren't going to work, right? Like you'll look through it and you'll think, not that activity, but some of them are really good. And the best thing is this handout is really great for spurring your own thinking about some interactive community building, collaboration activities for classes. And so we just split this up into 3 sections: the large lecture, and small groups. For the large lecture, one of the activities is the Think, Pair, Share. And of course, this is where students are given something to consider, a question, an idea, an inquiry, and then they come together and pose with each other, possible answers. They sort of together try to solve that before they share with the larger class. The whiteboard capture is a really great activity, especially for students who really want to go back and refer to materials from class later. If you've used a lot of whiteboard in your class, you could take photographs at the end. You could upload those to Canvas really quickly, and now they're there for students to reference what happened in class today. I know in my classes, sometimes students will just take a picture with their cameras, with their phones, of something we have up on the board. And so it's a good reminder that there are students who really want to preserve that learning in some way. For small groups, we like the jigsaw activity. So this is an activity that it's a little confusing maybe to get students figuring out what they're doing, but as soon as they do, they're good with it. So the idea is you've got a lot of material. Let's say you got 4 groups. So you're going to divide up that material among the groups, right? And each group has a different, obviously, since you divided it, they've got something different to focus on. So they learn sort of the part that they need to learn, and then you remix the group so that there's somebody from all 4 groups together in a new group. And now they've all got a piece of important information that everybody needs. So they're invested, they kind of want to share with each other and learn from each other because they know they've only got part of the puzzle. So those are those. Oh, sorry. And then this is some of the sources that I'll drop in the chat for you in just a minute. The collaborating online source is really good for group work. I mean, it's not like we don't know how to do group work, certainly. But what I like about it is this writer is really intentional about helping us remember to think through our scaffolding and all the steps, like what's the thing that needs to be happening in this moment in the group project. So for me, it's a nice reminder of how I really need to remember to take that time to help my students understand how these things are building together, so that they see why that piece is an important piece of the step. The Kathy Davison article it's a little dated because it's about pandemic times, not that we're not still in them, but it's like from maybe last fall. But what I like about this article, and I think it's worth including, is the importance of remembering that everybody's been working and learning and teaching under stress, and just that we need to be empathetic and remember that people are traumatized by this, and that it's important to not say things necessarily like we're back to normal when people aren't really feeling that. And then there's the activities for interactive learning, and then of course our CTL site, which we recommend.
Thank you so much for that. That is
Thank
all fabulous stuff. And as always, we do have plenty of resources to point to. And I know that all of these are going to be, shareable. And I think all of these events always have such a long list of things that people would like. So our next group, we are ready to go.
Well, I'll briefly tell about a particular, I hesitate to say experience, but a wonderful evolving opportunity for experiential learning, that is interdisciplinary experiential learning, that was born last summer when I reconnected with a colleague who's a faculty emerita from UNC Charlotte. And what started, or the birth of the project, which actually is teaching, the birth of the project was when we were at a gerontology program meeting and had a great idea for a research project, but we didn't have funding. So we thought, how can we, get some help gain some momentum? And we all, as gerontology program members, see great value in exposing students across disciplines to gerontology and trying to attract their interest in working with this wonderful population. So over the course of a few weeks, we had some really exciting dialogue, and we ended up developing a special topics course, which was named Gerontology 50/50. And this is a course that is completely online, of course, but it has an experiential learning component. So what we did over the course of the few weeks when we developed our special topics course was we fleshed out our research project. And we also, as we were building the research project, we also simultaneously were developing a course, that is the special topics course learning objectives, as well as weekly module learning objectives. And it all just converged beautifully. We, at the same time, identified readings for the students, and there's interactive online activities for them to do. We started out with discussion forums, but what was really kind of cool, again, here in some of our Active Learning Academy, I learned about some additional tools such as Padlet, which I love. I can send you a link to Padlet for anybody who's interested and maybe doesn't know about that. But we've utilized Padlet as well as Flipgrid, which is another tool I learned about through the Active Learning Academy. So the students have really active, engaged opportunities to learn and dialogue with each other in the class. We also built in several live sessions over the course of the semester. And the students are, again, doing experiential learning, because beyond what they're doing in the online classroom, they're out in the community. They're actually collecting this data. They're gaining experience recruiting participants, sites. They've gone through human subjects training and gotten their human subjects certification. They've done data collection with the participants and the sites that they've reviewed, because this is this is a qualitative study. So they have conducted interviews, and we've wound down the semester by teaching them over the course of several weeks, beginning to teach them and expose them to what quality content analysis entails. And we've been working through the last few meetings we had were Zoom sessions, and these students participated in content analysis of our interview transcript. So it's been really kind of cool, because we've taken the students through the experience, and we've also advanced a project that we did not have the funding to start with. Now, the other piece of that, which was really exciting, is we did find out that we got some external funding just this past January. The other thing that's really nice from an educational perspective is that the course was so popular last fall that it's back by popular demand this spring. And we've already got a request for a graduate student who wants to do wants it to be offered this summer. So we're going to offer it again this summer. So it's been really fun, very energizing for us. And the students have talked about how much fun it is because it's real life research. I've probably exceeded my time, so I'll turn it over to my colleague, Barbara.
I want to share a bit today about what I've used to integrate some multidiscipline learning into my management group. So I have a course, International Business Management. It's very general, but of course, anything having to do with management has a lot to do with multiple functions. So I picked up something that was introduced by one of my colleagues, Vijay Patel, and it's CESIM. It's an online business simulation experience. And what it is, it's a multi-group competition, friendly competition-based business simulation package. So I stipulated what the groups were. In this case, we've had a lot of interesting discussion today about how you do groups. So I kind of took the executive decision at that point that I was going to create the group. It is a subscription service, so the students have to pay $40 to subscribe for it. And the interdisciplinary part is that it incorporates finance, manufacturing, logistics, forecasting, marketing, sales, R&D, and strategic management decisions all into this simulated experience. There was one practice round. We had 7 live rounds. We had 1 per week. And it's flexible scheduling. So I really like this product. It allows the instructor to schedule commensurate with how the course flow is going. And you can do it all at once, you know, consecutive weeks, you can spread it out. There's lots of options. It's a very robust software. I was delighted with it. It had modeling capabilities. So as the groups were making executive decisions and tactical decisions on which direction the simulation was going, they could actually model it in advance. So there was a simulation that said, if I make this decision, what are my outcomes going to look like? And I really like that quite a bit. The outputs were excellent. So they had lots and lots of data, maybe almost too much data, but I was able to then wean it down for them because the instructors are given graphs and visuals to share with the group. And then the group members get lots of feedback and lots of information. So what was the feedback I got? This is the most interesting thing that I was interested in. How did the students feel about it? They had to ante up $40 to do it. So is it worth keeping? So I did a poll everywhere just a few days ago, asking them about their experience with this software. Here are the 2 key things I got. You know, would have been great if we had a little more upfront instruction, both on the multidisciplinary pieces. So could you give us some insight into some of the key finance things, some of the key manufacturing, some of the key marketing, because the experiences were mixed in the class. And then the other feedback they had was, it would have been great in the software itself if there was more visual instruction. So for my visual learners, it was all very text-based. So I'm going to pass that along to the company that quite a number of the students would love to see embedded instructional videos as opposed to just straight text. So I was thrilled with it. And generally, so one of the options in my poll everywhere was, yeah, you know, maybe we should lose this next semester, but I didn't get any of that response at all. And I was delighted to see that. So I'm going to give the company these feedbacks. I'm going to take some of them. If I teach this course in a future semester, I'm going to incorporate these other things into it. So that was my experience. And CESIM as a company has simulations that are not only business oriented, but they have some technical and STEM type simulations as well. So highly recommend it. So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Barbara. These have been fantastic presentations, and now we have an opportunity for some Q&A.
There was the second group. I think I wanted to know, you know, how the tools you were using were working out for large classes specifically. Yeah. Which tools were most useful? Thank you, Bryce. definitely you're faster on the draw than me.
In the large classes, I'll try to answer that. In the large classes, I think it's working pretty well for the individual comments. Like when we like the particular one that I was talking about, I think I was talking about Mentimeter or Miro. Actually, I think Miro was one that I was talking about. If it's individual, when you're doing a large class that's in person, for example, if everyone's trying to respond, then sometimes the clouds get too big and it gets a little bit more complicated to kind of understand. But as the answers are coming in, if we touch on things and talk about things, it's a great discussion, and actually more things come up from that as other people will ask things related to that. So I think it works pretty well for large classrooms. And even in an online setup, it's possible to do the groups and then have the groups participate. So they'll do a smaller discussion first, and then their group will present in the cloud as one word or one key term or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
As a follow-up to that group, did you have any trouble using technologies that weren't university supported?
No, so far, no, not much of a trouble there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so for our group that did active learning in an online, active learning and online learning, that did the SOTL project together, this is such a great example of collaboration around SOTL research. What advice might you have for faculty who wish to conduct a multidisciplinary SOTL research study? And specifically, how did you come together as a research team to sort of pursue that? And, you know, might you pursue that together further?
I can start, and then if my teammates want to jump in, please do. So we actually met as part of the Active Learning Academy. So this is a great way to actually meet people, especially from other disciplines, who share your interest in active learning, collaborative learning, and what have you. So that's how we met. We were in an ALA group, or well, we were in the ALA together, and ALA had facilitated this session for people to start talking about and think about whether they're interested in doing SOTL projects together. So that's how our group got together.
All right, and do you have an example of a team activity that you've assigned that was really successful, one that was maybe a favorite?
I think Eric unmuted, so go ahead.
Yeah.
Eric.
Well, I'm trying to think if we had one that was common across all three sections. I don't know if we did as much as just using what Tanya and Sam created in terms of like two things, actually, a checklist of just what makes for successful group experiences, and including that checklist in Canvas, I think was something we all did and was effective for students. And then also in sort of a complementary way with the checklist, there was a survey that we gave our students that they could start self-identifying different groups, strengths that they have in terms of like what Bryce was saying, work ethic, what days of the week work best for them to meet, what do they prefer to use in terms of communication. And those were all, I think, very important ways to help support the students in that online collaborative space, and to do that early on in the semester and then have checkpoints. So I would say those, rather than an activity per se, that kind of way of building in the scaffolding in the communication was effective.
Thank you. All right, and last question for our third group. It looks like there was a price tag for students to participate in the simulation program. Was there a price for faculty to facilitate as well? And then an additional follow-up question, did the students bulk at all paying to participate in that, or did it go over okay?
It actually went over okay because it was part of the syllabus, and they knew coming in that this was going to be part of the course. There is no fee for the instructor. And I think it went pretty well. Some of the students, definitely had to take a bit of time to pay, and maybe paid in a couple of installments, which the company does offer, and that worked out well.
Fantastic. I mean, I certainly think the price looked far more affordable than some of the traditional textbooks out there. So I imagine it was more palatable than some of those other situations that some of our disciplines get forced into. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, thank you to everyone. These were absolutely fabulous.
Welcome back, everyone. We've got one more block of lightning talks to go, and our first group is from the Transforming STEM Academy. I'll go ahead and let them kick this off and share their presentation. Nadia, take it away.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our lightning talk. We are an active learning academy team focusing on transforming STEM teaching and learning. And I am joined today with my awesome colleagues, which we will start by introducing ourselves.
I'm Ellen Wisner from the Department of Biological Sciences.
I'm Lauren Woods. I'm from the Department of Chemistry.
Kathy Asala, also from Chemistry.
Tanya Bates from Biological Sciences.
I'm in Geography and Earth Sciences.
And I'm Nadia Najjar in Software Information Systems and School of Data Science. So we will start.
So as mentioned, this group of faculty are all a part of the Transforming STEM Academy. And we wanted to first just share a few reasons why there's a need to transform STEM education. So you can see we want to promote undergraduate STEM student success. There's a high demand for STEM graduates. There are disparities in STEM degree attainment. There's a lack of representation in STEM fields. And we also want to increase active learning and student-centered learning in the classroom. I'm going to turn it over.
So we aim to transform STEM here at UNC Charlotte by having faculty participate in our Transforming STEM Teaching and Learning Academy. So this is a faculty learning community that was created to introduce STEM faculty to evidence-based teaching practices and supports them as they implement these practices into their courses. And we do this by some of the things mentioned here on this slide. We have regular meetings throughout the academic year where we invite experts on teaching and learning. So a lot of people from Center for Teaching and Learning support us. Thank you, everyone. The Office of Accreditation and Assessment do workshops on assessment of student learning. It's helpful to our faculty. And then we do have a variety of faculty whose research expertise here on campus. They study undergraduate STEM education, so persistence in STEM, things of that nature, and education faculty who, again, research expertise is to study reflective teaching and feedback, and so give us those tools we need to be reflective in our teaching. And then we also incorporate STEM education literature, and mentioned on this slide are a couple of the resources we've used.
So as already mentioned, one of the major focuses of the Transforming STEM Academy is to learn and then incorporate evidence-based practices, teaching practices into our courses. And so by evidence-based, we mean strategies that have been shown to be effective either through published data or maybe data that we've been able to collect in our own classes to see that they're actually working. So in addition to that, our small group today was really interested in practices and strategies that help to promote equity in the classroom. And so what we focus on are evidence-based practices that promote equity in the classroom. And we also wanted to share changes that don't take a huge amount of effort to implement. So those are micro interventions, which are just small changes that you could make to your class that could have a really big impact on student learning. And so on the next couple of slides, we'll go over the different interventions that our different group members have incorporated into their courses.
So we're just gonna go in order here. So I'm first. The micro intervention that I incorporated was a video assignment. This was done in my General Chemistry 2 course. And this course is for science majors. The assignment served as an alternative assessment. So rather than a traditional exam question that they would write out their answer, I had students pair up and make a video that they recorded. And this gave them some flexibility and ways to demonstrate their learning other than a fully written out kind of traditional problem solving exam question. So it allowed them to become the teacher to their peers They then had to review 2 other videos that their peers made and give feedback.
So in my class, I've incorporated collaborative assignments to promote equity. I teach a large enrollment, diverse biology course. And each week, students complete a team activity where they examine some scientific data on topics like cancer, health disparities, antibiotic resistance. And students are asked individually to reflect on these group activities as well as course content, so how they interacted in the group and the content as well. So we know it's well established that these collaborative active learning strategies can increase student performance and can improve inequities in STEM courses.
And I utilize reflection really to highlight the kind of concept of learning from experience. So, and really what motivated me for looking into that was probably, as mentioned in many of the talks today, is looking for alternative way of assessment, the authentic type of assessment. So it's actually stemmed from my own reflection on how I assess students. And of course, with the pandemic, again, we found ourselves thinking more and more about. And what I found attractive about this kind of approach is really that it highlights kind of the way we learn specifically from experience, which seemed very applicable to kind of the courses, the topics that I teach, and you know, just kind of highlight that experience in order for students kind of understand, acquire the skill, and of course develop their practices. And one of the key concepts of reflection really is kind of, you know, that self-inquiry and kind of being motivated by the learner's kind of development and assessing that. So for us instructors, we needed to think of ways of how to capture that and facilitate that. And of course that resonated well, you know, especially that I do often, you know, see students really most of the time with any kind of activity we give them, they focus on checking the boxes and how many points will they score, right? Their grade. And the process really for reflection kind of helps students develop that kind of conscious effort, or at least I hoped it would do that conscious effort and awareness of their kind of learning and the concepts we're introducing them. So I've experimented with injecting kind of reflection in kind of a low effort way on my end and kind of revamping my courses. Doesn't require me to revamp a lot of my content, but injecting it in as many activities in the classroom and the modules and assignments and giving them a way to kind of think through their process. So if I would going to give an advice to anybody who's thinking of implementing any type of reflection in their courses, is you need to probably think of 2 things. One is the prompts that you give to students, because that's the way we kind of guide them through the process. So, and sets expectations from what you kind of want them to do and reflect back on. And also how feedback is still important regardless, is how you're going to give them feedback. And for that, I found having kind of like really a simple 3-scale rubric that's more generic and open-ended really works well and gives me a way to also kind of personalize that feedback and give them kind of just short comments along with that rubric to kind of highlight and give that individual feedback and making that really also that connection, because there's a lot of, and with reflection, you'll find there's a lot of kind of personal things that come up. So it really kind of built that in with an online setting, and a lot of us adapting kind of asynchronous and being really flexible with submissions and things. I think I felt like it kind of shortened, you know, or that gap between that. And with that, I'll turn it over to my next colleague, I think Jamie.
Yeah, one of my teaching goals is to help students make their thinking visible to themselves and to others in order to deepen their learning. So I use a series of thinking routines that have been developed by a group at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I'll put the link in the box here, but these help them to not only deepen understanding, but also to be able to kind of bring that understanding into their own scheme, right, or their own schemata, and then they're able to be able to do some really kind of creative things, because some of the routines really require them to make things as well as to show their thinking. So this is something I found to be pretty helpful, and I use it in every class I teach. Thanks.
So the strategy that I've been using is incorporating utility value assignments into my classes. And so essentially a utility value assignment is convincing or showing students why they should care about the material because it relates to their own life or their own life goals. And so it's more than just giving them examples of why they should care, but the assignments I use have them reflect on what they've learned and then tell me in writing assignments how it relates to their actual life, like why they should care about it. And then the reason I was interested in these is there is research that shows that it helps all students retain the material. And it also helps to decrease achievement gaps seen between minority and non-minority students, and also between first generation and continuing generation students.
And I'll just quickly discuss what some ideas we discussed in our breakout group is gamification. So making the learning more engaging using Google Escape Rooms, as we talked about earlier today, really playing a role of not just creating engaging material, but kind of like our keynote speaker said, is putting in the sense of students taking ownership of their own learning and being the main character. And so we'll go through, or I went through a few examples and talked specifically about how to approach it in a video game or D&D-esque way. Next slide. And Jules already asked about this in the chat, but there is still time to build your team in the STEM. The QR code will link you to the application. If you have any questions about what our next cohort looks like, email our fearless leaders, Tanya and Kathy. Their emails are provided for you.
Thank you so much to the STEM Academy team and the Active Learning Academy. I love it when we can partner two faculty learning communities together. Our next group is Erica, Colleen, and Ali.
Hi, everyone. So we are a small multidisciplinary team that met each other all for the first year at the start of this year's Active Learning Academy. And so I'm Colleen Hamilman. I'm in the Department of Geography and Earth Sciences, and I generally teach undergraduate and graduate courses focused on urban geography, food systems, and qualitative methods. We're each going to introduce ourselves as we go through the presentation today. What we reflected on as we were meeting throughout the semester and then developed these workshops about is really how we have come to use technology as an active learning tool in our classrooms, both some things prior to the pandemic, what we learned when things were online, and then most especially what we've learned over the last year, where we have found ourselves in this liminal space, right? Where we started the year online and then we came in person, but some students want to stay online, some don't. Sort of how we use technology to navigate all of that. And we want to emphasize as we get started here that, some of the tools that we're going to share today are just one piece in a puzzle. So we find that they work well in some instances, but less well in others. And so we're sharing sort of our experiences, but with that caveat that it'll vary in different settings, depends on the students, the size of your classroom, and so on. And so we think of these all as great tools, but not sort of a key solution to bringing technology into the classroom. And so I will then turn it over to Ali to give our first example.
Hi, I'm Ali Amadei. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm an associate professor of costume design in the theater department. So over the last year, I've enlisted the help of our colleagues in Atkins Library in Area 49, Beth Caruso and Kristen Lamkowski, and our area librarian, Jenna Renalducci, I hope I'm not brutalizing her name, to better incorporate library resources and available technology. So this has helped add some spice to my theater classes and encourage more active learning by using the technology. So today I'm sharing one of our successful applications. So for our first design project in costume design, we used the visualization lab to share the students' design presentations and conduct critiques. To do this, I created a slideshow with slides featuring each of the students' submitted designs scaled to fit the screen. This was then projected onto the large screen in the Viz lab. This enabled students to experience what the costume designs would look like at human scale and group together on the screen, much as they would be on a stage. The students then shared their design pitch and engaged in a peer-to-peer critique of the presented work. So since theater is a collaborative art form, having this shared group experience felt very important and regenerative after time spent in pandemic physical and artistic isolation. So additionally, by using this technology, we were able to simulate the experience of seeing a design at human scale and better illustrate what the real world application of their design ideas would be. As another benefit, this was also the first experience being in the library for more than half of my students. This also gave an opportunity for the Atkins librarians to do a quick intro to the available resources that they could then apply to future projects. While this did require some quick cut and paste work in Google Slides for me to facilitate the lab presentations, overall, it's something that I definitely plan to continue in the future and would recommend this as an activity for any visual arts or visually based assignment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. And so we go from high tech Viz Lab and all the amazing resources that the library has. And I see in the chat, other people are commenting that the library has a ton of amazing resources for getting students hands-on with some of the materials. To maybe a little more old school, thinking about discussion posts in Canvas. And so this is something that I use in many of my classes, but especially this semester in a writing intensive class, in which I've asked students to several times throughout the semester reflect on the readings that we're doing on their own and submit a discussion post. And in this, they just give a short 400-word summary of the reading, their evaluation of it, what they thought it did well and what it doesn't do well, and then 2 discussion posts or questions that come up from those readings. And what I have found is that while this is a little bit old school and it's something that's just, they work on their own in Canvas for it, it really enhances the participation as they come into the classroom because they've had time to think about the readings and to think about these questions. And so when they develop the questions and submit them to me ahead of time, they're more likely to also ask them when they come into the classroom and we talk about those readings. And if I see some that I think are really good or that have come up over time, then I can bring that into the classroom as well. And so I have found this to be a really useful tool for engaging students. It's something Canvas makes quite easy. And the only downside I would say is that if you were teaching a class of 100 students, this becomes a very heavy workload to go through all those discussion posts every week. All right, and now we turn it to Erica for our last example.
Hi, I'm Erica Weber. I'm in the civil engineering department. And the method that I'm talking about today is actually the peer review process on Canvas. We started using this once COVID hit. I was teaching a writing intensive materials lab where students have to write memos a total of 6 memos throughout the semester. With this peer review process on Canvas, the students are able to upload their memo or their report, whatever they're going to be reviewing, and then they are assigned via Canvas, either manually or automatically assigned 1 to 2 or however many I chose, and I chose 2 memos to review. And as they reviewed the memos, I gave them an assigned worksheet to go through to basically structure it, because I know I have a bunch of sophomores, and when I tell sophomores review each other's paper, they don't really know what to get out of it. So I gave them a worksheet to go through, and they did all the peer reviews through Canvas. It was beneficial because it actually gave students a little bit of direction. They could also do it at their own time. Some of the key things I had to make sure I did was I actually had to assign 2 assignments. One assignment would be a submission assignment, and the other assignment would be grading their peer review worksheet that they did on Canvas as well. Another issue with that is students that did not turn in their submission were not able to be assigned a peer review. So you had to make sure, the students had to make sure that they did that in order to doing those. I would recommend when you're doing these peer reviews on Canvas to make sure that you create some sort of guidance with it. So it's not just a here, do your peer review, but give them a worksheet or something to direct them as they're going through that process.
And so we'll just wrap up with some overall trends that we noticed as we talked about how we've used technology in the classroom throughout the last couple of years. And in the earlier workshop we did, we also talked about the way that Zoom, as we're all on Zoom now, has become an ever-present tool in our teaching, and other on-campus technology resources that we've used. And we really were sort of reflecting on this trend of before COVID, you know, that this technology was occasionally used. Students maybe weren't so familiar with it. Obviously, in the heat of the pandemic, everything went online and we all had to learn how to navigate it quite quickly. But as this goes on, we're finding a lot of these tools are really useful for meeting students where they are. And so students who may do better offline with time to think about stuff and then submitting something are given that opportunity, while students who may do better in the classroom thinking out loud in that space have that opportunity as well. And so, as I said, you know, these are sort of all a piece in the puzzle of how to meet students where they are and really engage them in taking responsibility for their learning as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colleen, Ali, and Erica. That was a wonderful presentation. Our final lightning talk of the day is Angela. Angela, feel free to go ahead and share your screen.
This is in collaboration with my Active Learning Academy team for this year, which includes Dhruv Damani and Di von Briesen. They are both part-time faculty who were not able to make it today, so I will be presenting on all of our behalves. And we had lots of discussions, really excellent discussions about the theme of this year's Active Learning Academy. Like, what have we learned? What's working? What's not working? A lot of cathartic Google Doc sort of brainstorming. And in the spring, we coalesced around this theme of communication and scaling using randomization. We are a special team. We are all members of the College of Computing and Informatics. Dhruv and I are both in the Department of Computer Science. Di is in the Software and Information Systems Department. I'm also jointly appointed in the School of Data Science, and Dhruv and Di both primarily teach for us in CCI's Integrated Critical Core. So that's what the ICC on this slide stands for. These are our college-wide courses that all of our students take that are essential for any of our concentrations in computer science. So let me move the Zoom bar out of the way so I can see my own slides. The primary motivation of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go through very quickly. If any of this goes by too fast, then you care a lot and don't have time to ask a lot of questions, because we're getting to the end and we're all going to be going our separate ways and hopefully meeting up at the Golden Owl. But this is also a longer form of this presentation we gave earlier in the spring semester and is available on the CTL YouTube page. So if you want to see Di and Dhruv speak in their own words about their methods, you can certainly look that up, or I can send you the link. In addition to standard workplace communication, there's all kinds of communication that's really important in tech, which I think a lot of people outside of tech don't realize, or our students when they first come in don't realize. They think, oh, technology has nothing to do with communication, which is simply not true. It is extremely important in tech careers in lots of different formats. But also, even though there are other areas of academia where there are problems recruiting students, or there's sort of a decreased population overall of college student age in the United States, CS, bachelor's degree enrollment, is still skyrocketing. It's, you know, bubbled and fallen a few times, you can see, but we have not hit the apex of our current upswing yet. And so everyone in CS education is talking about, how do we do things at scale And how do we do things better than we've been doing them for decades? Like, technology is a very fast-paced field, of course, and we want to be using student-centered learning techniques and assessments that are actually meaningful, all of this kind of stuff. But our scale just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And so how do we do this? We all have been tackling this in different ways, really all of us in CCI, but the three of us on this team are going to share a few strategies that we think are universal. So they aren't specific to teaching programming courses, although there's a lot of programming on this slide. So Dhruv actually kind of invented his own thing, which is very cool. The courses that he kind of inherited as a part-time instructor were primarily using programming assignments and multiple choice quizzes as assessment. And even in the courses he took as a master's student in our college, a lot of them didn't emphasize written communication beyond writing code. And mostly this is explained by the scale problem I was just discussing and the fact that there's only 24 hours in a day. So even with bunch of TAs, you only have so much time to grade detailed written assignments. Many of you, this is like your whole job. And so you know that. And so what he came up with, he really wanted to incorporate more verbal communication as a form of assessment in computing courses. So he not only integrated communication into his assessment in a way that wasn't being done in the courses that he was teaching. He also scaled that using randomization. So he put the students in groups. He would pick a random student from the group to assess verbally rather than assessing all 100 or however many students he had in a course. And he also did not ask every question that students had to prepare for that day. He would randomly pick one question. And so he has some more details here I will go through quickly since this is a much shorter presentation, but he uses the flipped classroom approach. I made him include this slide because I thought this was such a cool tool. He uses Dropbox Replay for his recorded lectures, which allows students to, you can see the demo here, annotate at specific points in a video. They can add comments, they can draw on it. It's very cool. I want to find out if Dropbox is the only and the best way to do this, but it's a very cool idea. And he, uses this to get questions during the first lecture of each week. And in addition to the lectures, like many of us would with, say, reading guides or something, you give a list of questions of like, what are you supposed to get out of this? And so here's an example he uses. And the types of questions he wants to ask on this content are not really well suited to multiple choice questions. I've seen some really creative instructors do really amazing things with the multiple choice format, but you have to get really creative. And these kinds of things are better as open-ended questions, or easier as open-ended questions. And so these are the types of questions he used for assessment. And so here is the outline of how it all comes together. The first session of the week, the students in their groups talk about the questions. They're supposed to have prepared them ahead of time, and they kind of come to a consensus in their small groups. Each group gets a Google form that looks kind of like what you're seeing on the right. And he uses this for attendance and participation measurement. And the TAs reach out to any students who are falling behind or not participating to try and assist them. And after this, so in the second session, the instructor, Dhruv, will choose a random student who was part of this consensus building process. So the whole team should be on board with whatever their understanding of the topic is, since they all came up together with their answers. And then the student who is interviewed for whatever one or two questions Dhruv asks, that's the grade that goes to the entire group. He does do some curving, and they are low stakes grades anyway. So he does curving in terms of if one student is completely stumped, he'll just ask a second student at the table. He gives them 2 or 3 attempts so as not to bomb the entire group with one student. And here were some of his key takeaways. It prevents one student from doing all the work because any of them could be called on. They have a discussion, or the instructor has a discussion with the students to kind of pinpoint exactly where the level of their knowledge is. That can be hard to assess, even with written assignments, but definitely with multiple choice. And there's lots of flexibility built in and no grading overhead outside of class. He did not get as many complaints as he thought he would with having like a completely new thing he thought up or new approach to this that he thought up. And it actually got the students watching the lecture videos and talking to each other. And so, yeah, he found it to be pretty helpful. My technique that I would like to share, for some context, I've mostly been teaching 6-credit studio style team taught data science undergraduate courses with various enrollment numbers. And the first course is extremely interdisciplinary. The second course is only slightly less interdisciplinary. The students work in teams all the time, and they're making progress towards a challenge or project at the end of each half term. And I used weekly status reports. I actually borrowed this idea from, well, lots of people use it, but I got the idea from Nadia, who I think is still on the call. And initially, I just wanted to use them to assess team contributions and early intervention when a student was struggling or not participating, similar to what Drew was doing with his Google Forms. But I actually got some bonus outcomes of students practicing something that's used all the time. Weekly status reports or monthly or semi-monthly status reports are something that are used in software development all the time. They call them stand-up meetings in some programming circles or development circles. Students are getting that practice of reflecting on what they've done and what they need to do next, because those are the types of questions I ask. And I can also gather formative feedback on the course. I'm not going to go into the demo, obviously, for time reasons. Then I have a second piece here that I am going to talk about for like a second, because this leads into our third team members thing. So I shared this with my team that I was using a Google form to collect daily attendance. And I was transferring each daily attendance into a mega spreadsheet that was tracking it over time. It was labor intensive, but it's kind of how I've always done it anyway. I was transferring from a paper spreadsheet to a master sheet. And so now I was just transferring from Google Sheets to that. But DI really took this idea and ran with it. So he was taking attendance in a huge running Google Doc. He would set up one Google Doc on the first day of class, and then he would use that for that class for the entire semester. It would be the top link, never changing, never moving at the top of his Canvas homepage. Like, here's the attendance link. And in order to just, since it's always there and always the same, in order to keep students from just like clicking it an hour before or after class and adding themselves to attendance so he didn't have accurate records, he used a specific attendance prompt for each day. Some of you might already do this, and I'm going to do an example if I have time. Yes, I'm getting to that on the next slide, Jules. It's so great. Oh no, it's actually on the slide, duh, the third bullet point right here. So Jules put in the chat already a link to the wheel of names he was using, which was really cool. It was literally like the Wheel of Fortune wheel. He would paste in all the names from the Google Doc from that day, and it would spin and pick someone. And that was kind of his way of cold calling. And so there's some randomization there. That's how it fits into our theme. But he also did some adjustments after, we all were collaborating and sharing ideas. So he started using a Google form like I did, but he didn't want to give up the fact that he had like no overhead on that, because it was one Google Doc. He'd never had to update links or copy documents or like collate information. So I have this Google Doc here. Anyone who is paying attention, please go to yellkey.com/exactly. This is a link shortener, obviously, but it's also a temporary link shortener. So this link will only work for 5 minutes. I really like using this link shortener for class. If it's something I'm only going to use for the next hour, there's options here. If I'm only going to use it for the next hour or the next day, if it's something like really fast in class, I don't need a permanent link. I don't need to give them that super long Google Doc link. So if you go here, you will fill in your attendance, tell me who you are, how you're attending today, and then the prompt. The way DI got around having to change the prompt every day is he's like, ask for the prompt if you're ready to answer it. So my prompt for you is, what was a pandemic hobby that you picked up? So something that you tried for the first time during the pandemic when we all had free time because we were isolated and at home and couldn't go anywhere. Very tongue-in-cheek on the free time idea, but and I will pick up, looks like we have one response. I'll wait till we get a few more if we do have any more. That last question is a just relic of my actual attendance sheet that I give in my class. You don't, if you have concerns, you can certainly let me know. But, oh, it is yellkey.com/exactly. I can put it in the chat too. It gives a plain English word after yellkey.com always. It's a temporary, you just go to yellkey.com on its own to get the link generator, and then it will generate a link of this format for whatever time period you specify. Okay, I think we might see more results pour in, but I'm going to click on this because I have negative time now, I assume. So I had put in some fake entries just to make sure my stuff was working, but let me set all those fake entries to a earlier date. Oh, kind of broke it. Oops, not that one, this one. So I have this set up, and this is how DI has his set up. I just kind of tried to replicate his to show you how this changed his approach. What this does, this is just a now function in Excel or in Google Sheets to say what today is. And so it's going to search the timestamp column since he uses the same sheet every class period. He has it search for the entries from today. And so I use the today link, and then I find out where today starts using a VLOOKUP. And then I have it randomly generate someone from the beginning of today to the end of today. So that's the randomization piece. So because I messed with the formula, it just chose someone new. So Jamie was chosen first, and now it's Erica's turn for me to call on her on the spot and ask a question. And if I wanted to just do it again, now Fred, and I just hit a button, now Nadia. So it's randomly, every time he wants to ask a new question, he can just randomly choose.
This is so cool, Angela. If someone wants to try to use this, would you be open to them reaching out to you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to share like edit access to both the form and the Google Sheet. And you can make a copy for yourself if you will find this useful. What I actually do is I do a different sheet every day, which is maybe I should be following DI's example. But if you like the not having to deal with like one Google Doc for every day of your class, then you can use DI's cool formulas here.
Okay, thank you so much. I do want to run into questions, and we do have some questions that have been coming in through the chat here. So let me take a look at my chat. Just vanished here. Let me bring back the chat. Where did my chat go? Let's see. Oh, I see. Okay, I have to make it bigger again. Okay, thank you so much to our afternoon presenters, all of you. I have some questions. It looks like we have So absolutely, I'm seeing in the chat here, great work, everyone. I mean, I was just gushing about how proud I am of everyone today in the Active Learning Academy. This has been the best Active Learning Academy Expo ever. So let's have some questions, Q&A, and then I will wrap it up for the day. So here we have some questions. Let's see. Making thinking visible. In the morning, we had a presentation where faculty did a pre-course survey on learning preferences. What are you hearing from students about these opportunities to gain better insight into learning about how they learn and think? And I don't know that was directed towards a specific team or if that's just directed towards all teams. I think it's directed towards all teams. So if anyone wants to take that, what are you hearing from students about ways that they are learning now and how they are thinking post-pandemic? Anyone who wants to take that can unmute.
I think I'm still unmuted, so I'll just say my students are still really struggling with metacognition, like knowing how they learn, thinking about how they think.
Yeah.
And I think it's gotten worse after a period of isolation, although I don't have any quantitative measures on that.
Yeah, I think because, excuse me, a lot of what I do is paper-based, even if it's just grab a Post-it note that's, close by, like these little Dr. Seuss ones that I happen to have right here. That's something that's harder to get students to do post-pandemic, is to write on stuff, which I never would have guessed in a million years. But once they do it and then try it, things improve. But that's definitely been a change.
If I can offer something, kind of to build on my colleagues, what I do is the very first time my classes get together, I literally go student by student when they're introducing themselves, whether it's virtually online or face-to-face in the classroom. And I ask them to describe themselves in 2 words. And then I ask each student what their preferred learning style is. And then I explain to the class afterward that the reason I do that is so that I can incorporate the mix of their preferred learning styles into the course. And I said, while a particular week or a particular activity may not suit you personally, it is going to suit one of your colleagues, and we'll get the balance as we go. And I've always had really good positive feedback to that. And at the end of the semester, when I get course evaluations, one of the comments I consistently get back is, we feel like we're being listened to. We feel like this professor is really taking into account how I learn.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, I've got a question for the Leveraging Technology group, which was Colleen and Eric and Ali. We've heard from several interdisciplinary teams who've met via the ALA. What have you gained from your experience learning with faculty in other disciplines? This question is also appropriate for all attendees as well. But let's hear from the Leveraging Technology team first.
Well, I know for me being a theater person, they don't usually let us out of the building. So getting to talk to anybody else is like really refreshing in a way that it's nice to hear, but it's just such a different experience, classroom experience, I think in many ways that we have than other departments. So I think it's just valuable to hear the struggles and the similarities that other students and teachers are having with their students. At least for me.
I can say ditto to that.
Yeah.
I also found it interesting, the overlaps that we had, right? Like Ali and I were both talking about the library resources that we use and how the students benefit from that. And then I was able to adapt Erica's peer review work into my class this semester. And so despite, being all in quite different disciplines, there was a good deal of overlap in the materials we were using and engaging our students with.
Okay, thank you. And I've got another question here that was for Angela. It seems like a theme for today has been to try new teaching techniques, and each member of your group definitely tried innovative new strategies. What advice might you have to faculty who are considering trying something new, but maybe tentative about taking a chance on something new?
I would say jump in. I'm not the type to be hesitant, but I'm trying to think of a way to be more supportive of that mindset. Yeah, I mean, you could start small. That's the advice I've always gotten, is start small, start with something really tiny. So I was really surprised when Drew, who is only a part-time faculty member, like decided to invent his own like new technique and then pilot it midway through the semester, which Allie's suggestion is to start at the beginning. I completely agree. If you can get the students used to it from day one, that's actually way easier to get buy-in. Yeah, he like thought this up. He was like, this is how I want to incorporate it. I've been thinking about trying something that targets this skill for a long time. I finally came up with an idea. I'm starting it tomorrow. And so yeah, starting smaller is better, but and talking to people. I mean, that's how I get ideas. That's how I formulate my own thoughts about ideas, is talking to other educators in and outside my department and saying, you know, here's a thing I'm thinking, or here's a thing I'm trying, or here's a thing that I was absolutely horrible at. And like just hearing their experience as well. Everyone in the ALA is so good at bouncing ideas off of each other. And you know, there's tons of faculty who are not in the ALA who are also great at that. So there's definitely a supportive community here for that.
Thank you. I'm going to try to squeeze in one more question and a closure. So last question is for group one. So our first group, which is the STEM Academy group. Succinctly, I know, because there's so many, this is good, a big question, it's broad. What programs would you recommend to gamify learning? From the first group.
I guess that would be me. So it depends on your level. There's a lot of resources that were out there today, but I really like Google Forms. Like, it's simple, it gets to the point, it is very limited. The way that the Canvas quiz is made up now, you can also probably modify that to include some gamification if you're trying to do that. And of course, I've added some modification to Jeopardy games to make it more interactive for everyone instead of just one person at a time. While I don't know how in depth you want to go, but you know, one of the things I've been looking into is looking for more interactive Adobe products or things like that. They Captivate, but that costs money, and I don't know if I really want to spend the money on that yet. But there was a lot of information today that looks very promising that I might play around with.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Okay, I'm going to close it out. Thank you so much, everyone, today for participating. This has been, and I said it in the chat, this has been the best Active Learning Academy Spring Expo ever in my experience as far as my time here at the CTL. So that is all not because of me, it is because of every single one of you. You are the best cohort of ALA members we have had thus far. I am so just excited about everything that you have done and all the hard work that you've done this year. I am dropping into the chat yet again the ALA application for next year, because the ALA next year is going to look very different than it has for the past couple of years. We're very excited about our partnership with the Office of Academic Diversity and Inclusion and what we're going to be doing with them next year. And we're excited, and we hope that you will rejoin the Active Learning Academy again next year and go through this journey with us. And so please do take a look at next year's Active Learning Academy. The application closes this Friday, and then I will be forming groups with Dave Frensrev from OADI next week and contacting people to let them know what group you're in now, so you can go away for the summer if you do go away for the summer. And when you come back in August and we start activities, you'll know what team you're on. We're not going to do anything over the summer, so don't worry about that. No activities over the summer other than me maybe telling you, you know, here's some emails, but very few, nothing serious. Please do look into applying though, and thank you all so much. Heather, do you want to say anything else? You're here. I know you wanted to make some closing comments.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here the day after the last day of classes and for sharing all the way up until 3:45 in the afternoon. your work. You are inspiring. Your commitment to your students is inspiring. Everybody in the CTL, we're all hearing the messages going, can you believe this? This is just amazing. So thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your day and afternoon. I know Jules has got something special planned at the Owl, the Golden Owl, which is on campus. It's at the conference center. So for those of you who are here on campus, please do just join us over there. And good luck with the rest of your exams this semester. And we look forward to seeing you next year.